Hello dear students. Today we are going to deal with counters. The same as timers, in the TIA Portal software we find the newly integrated counters, in blue, and the ones of old versions or somatic counters. In general, there are three types of counters: the count up, the count down, and the count up and down. We start with the count up and see how it works. As you can see, these timers are supplied with data blocks. Now we fill up the counter parameters. We start with CU, it's the counter's input, and from here we increment the counter's value. Q obviously is the counter's output. We assign these with their addresses, then we move to the rest of parameters. The R is another input and stands for the counter's reset. From here that the counter's is reset to its initial value. PV is the preset value, it's an integer. In here, we enter the number of counts the counter will perform. For instance, we put 4. Now we rename the counter parameters to make the example more clear. Finally, the CV, which is the current counter value, holds the current number of counts. It's an integer, so its data type is a word. We give it a memory word address MW0 for example. For those who are not familiar yet with data types, we have put the link below on PLC memory. Check the second part about memory addressing. Well, we can now move to simulation. As you see no errors reported, we can now load the program. Before we run PLC Sim, we add from the insert box a memory area for the CV. By default, the memory area is a byte. As you know, the CV is a word, so we modify the B to W. Good. We launch PLC Sim and test the program. Normally each time we press on increment we see the value of the counter increase by 1 and the output will be active when we reach the preset value, which is 4. To reset the counter to its initial value, we press on reset. Good, let's test the counter once again. Hope you have seen clearly how the count up works. We can therefore move to the count down. In fact, they are very similar, but instead of incrementing, in the count down we decrement the counter's value. Well, here in the CD we put the input that decrements the counter, then we give it an address. We move to the second input LD, which means load. Its role is loading the preset value to the countdown counter. It also serves as a reset. As to the rest of the parameters, they are the same as the count up. So we let them as they are, then we move to simulation. As usual, we click on Run P to launch simulation and test the counter. As we can see, unlike the count up, here the output is active by default. We click now on LD to load the preset value and decrement the counter. Clearly the output turns on again when the counter's value reaches 0. Moreover, if we keep decrementing the counter, the output still active. That brings us to the conclusion that the output is active when the counter value is smaller or equal to 0. Good, we move now to the last one, which is the count up and down. As the name implies, the counter can be used both as a count up and count down. Let's see how it works. Here is the counter. Basically, it holds both the count up and down parameters with an additional output, one for the count up and the other for the count down. Since we have already the variables, we assign them directly to the counter, then we add the other output. Nonetheless, the lesson only serves as to give an idea about counters. Only when put in practical examples that we can see clearly their use. Additionally, the one that is used the most in PLC programming is the count up. Meanwhile, the two others are not common. Still, we need to know how they work. An industrial application of counters will be covered in the next video. As usual, we launch PLC Sim and test the program. As we see here, like the countdown counter, the countdown output is by default active. Now we start by incrementing the counter. At 4 counts the count up output turns on, so note here that it works the same as the count up. Now we decrement the counter by clicking on the decrement input. The first output deactivated just when the decrement was started. Plus, like the countdown counter, the second output turns on when CV is equal or smaller than 0. Therefore, we can say that the count up and down counter is a combination of the count up and down in a single block. We keep simulating. We click on load, the preset value is indeed loaded to the counter. We click on reset, the counter returns to its initial value. As a reminder, even if it's the count up counter that is commonly used, we are supposed to know all of them for the reason that as engineers sometimes we find solution to big problems in a basic and unexpected ways. We have seen the 3 categories of counters. As I mentioned early in the lesson, the main difference between these ones and those of SIMATIC Step 7 is that the new ones are supplied with data blocks. So let's pick a SIMATIC counter and test it with PLC Sim. Unlike the previous ones, it's up to us to enter the counter address. We put for instance C0. C refers to the memory area for counters, like T for timers. As beginners, it's essential to understand well PLC memory addressing. Another additional input here is the set. To enter the preset value, unlike the previous counter, we need first to put C# then the value. Good, as to the rest of parameters, they are the same as the previous ones. The current value CV is also available in BCD format. Well, we can now move to simulation. As you see, unlike the previous count up counter, here a single press on increment activates the output. The reset, like every counter, resets the counter to its initial value. As to the set, seemingly serves to load the preset value to the counter. Note that in this kind of counters, the most important and reused parameter throughout the PLC program is the CV. We will see this clearly in real-world application. Well, hope you have enjoyed the video, and make sure to give us a like and follow us for more videos. Thank you for watching.